It is my pleasure to be here today. I've been on the program at this meeting for a number of years now, and it gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of varieties, new varieties. Allows us to talk about in my case, some of the new varieties that are coming out of our research station. Certainly, we've got some Louisiana producers in here, and what we're doing would be impossible if it were not for our checkoff program that we have in the state of Louisiana. I think the same thing could be said for every state that's represented here. Farmers funding research is a beautiful model, and I think that it really has paid dividends over the past 40 or 50 years. We do have a new Clearfield long grain variety that we're releasing from the station at Crowley. It will be marketed as CL 153. You can see what it has in the pedigree. This is actually a sister line to the original Cocodrie variety. This is a Arkansas experimental line that we used in a number of crosses through the years. We got Cocodrie. The CFX 26 is a sister line to CL 111, and it's got some Chenier as well as another experimental line. So this is what the new variety looks like. What we're looking at here, CL 151 has been a predominant variety for many years. Variety's been out, I guess, about 8 years now. For a while, it was the most widely grown variety in Louisiana. I guess for a while, even one of the most widely grown varieties in the South. 151 has extremely high yield potential. For us, it is a little bit too susceptible to blast disease. We did have a significant amount of blast in 2012. We also had some blast pressure last year, probably not quite as much as in 2012. We think we're addressing this with the CL 153. It's got very, very good blast resistance, at least what we've seen to our predominant blast races out there. It also has comparable yield potential to CL 151, and it appears to have much better grain quality. In fact, it was looked at by several of the mills in a Rice Federation sort of study where they evaluated several of the new varieties, and all of the mills that evaluated CL 153 listed it as a package quality rice for their operation. So these are some of the yield numbers. It has yielded very well again. These are some of our multi-location tests here in Louisiana, what we call our commercial advanced tests, as well working with our cooperating breeders in the other states. This is just some summary data, and at the end of the day, you can see it's very, very similar to CL 151 in yield potential. And I just threw Mermentau in there as a comparison because this is kind of an up-and-coming non-Clearfield long grain variety in Louisiana. So in Louisiana, we're also concerned about second crop potential. And it does. We had, again in Louisiana this past year, we had probably the best second cropping year we've ever had. And it did show pretty good second crop yields. This is one of our off-station locations in Jeff Davis Parish. And again, this is another off-station location, a little bit higher ratoon yields overall. Bottom line here is, if a variety is going to be successful for us in Louisiana and also across the river in Texas, it's going to have good ratoon potential. The one thing that, we've put a lot of time and effort in working with Dr. Don Groth, who is our plant pathologist, is trying to just consistently increase disease resistance of our newer varieties. These are some of Don's ratings. Lower numbers indicate higher levels of resistance, And you can see when we compare the CL153 to CL151, it's got much better blast resistance. So these are just grain dimensions, and it does have, a lot of our customers really want a very long grain. And this length, this is in millimeters, it's right at almost 7 millimeters in length. And you can see it's much better in this characteristic than some of our other Louisiana released long grain varieties. Cereal chemistry is important. Our long grains as well as our medium grains must fit into certain categories, primarily with amylose and gel temp. And the new variety it's got the long grain characteristics. And I just threw this slide in here. This is our foundation field yield from 2015 at the rice station. And it's not really a good comparison because it's different fields, but you look at something experimentally for years, it is very good to finally get it in a production size field, albeit it's only 20 acres, and still see the yield potential that you saw in the research field. So this was at a 27-pound seeding rate, and it yielded for us a little bit over 50 dry barrels per acre, so that's a pretty good yield. Horizon took this line and had it in a couple of their demos this past year. This was one not far from the station at Crowley. Did good in that particular situation. This is one that Sonny had near Jonesboro, and it did quite well in that demonstration as well. And she did milling on it, and the milling looked very good as well. So we also have a new Clearfield medium grain variety. Will be marketed as CL272. Right now, the only really commercially available Clearfield medium grain is 271. 271 has very good yield potential, but it has a little bit less than desirable appearance quality. It tends to tombstone in some situations. We think the 272 is gonna address this. It's a fairly typical plant type for varieties coming out of our program at Crowley. The yield numbers again for this line, we've compared it to the old 261, 271, and also included Jupiter. And you can see over a 3-year period of time, it compares very favorably with these other 3 varieties. Actually, it has, at least numerically, a little bit of a yield advantage over both Jupiter and 271. You know, consistently our medium grains don't second crop as well, or that's what we said for years and years, but I think we're getting medium grains now that are a little bit more consistent in second crop yields. And again, it did perhaps not quite as well as Jupiter and 271, but it did pretty well. That's a good second crop for us. And again, the second location, when we can get 5,000 pound second crop yields, that's very good for us. It's a little bit more susceptible to blast disease than 271, but we don't think that blast is going to be a big issue with the new variety. And again, it does fall within the parameters of grain size for a good southern quality medium grain. Does have the cereal chemistry. Remember, the gel temp on medium grains is lower than long grains. The amylose content is lower, and that's why our medium grains tend to cook a little bit stickier. And it did very well in our foundation field as well, again at a 25-pound seeding rate. I think you've been hearing about the Provisia system that hopefully is going to be coming out fairly soon, hopefully within the next couple of years. This is a new herbicide-resistant system based on an induced mutant that is going to provide us an additional control of red rice and weedy rice. So we've taken this mutant and been working pretty diligently over the past 3 years or so on trying to come up with the first Provisio variety. We made a lot of crosses, did a lot of screening, had about 18 increases, about 400 row increases on the research station last year, and have narrowed it down to 2 experimental lines, one or both of which hopefully are going to be the first Provisio varieties. We took this material down to Puerto Rico, and we've got a 7-acre increase on 2 lines. About 3 acres of one, about 4 acres of another. 7 acres is not a lot for you, but a 7-acre increase for me in Puerto Rico, it's the biggest I've ever done. We didn't have a good field to put this in. So Anthony Rivera, that runs our nursery down in Puerto Rico, spent all last summer taking basically this was a piece of jungle. When I first looked at it, I wish I had a before picture, but I don't. And spent all summer getting it ready. Got it laser leveled for us. We actually modified a drill that we had on the research station, crated it up and shipped it down to Puerto Rico and planted these 2 increases. One of them was at a 7 pound per acre seeding rate. The other was a little bit over 8 pounds per acre. And we were able to get a pretty good flushing rain just a few days after we planted. And we got a very good stand, especially for that very low seeding rate. And I was down in Puerto Rico just last week, and we've got a very impressive stand. In fact, the rice is actually just starting to head. I did want to say that we have hired within the past year a new breeder to work with us at the Rice Research Station. Dr. Adam Famoso came to us from, he had been working with Pioneer, running their international rice program. Pioneer has a big program in India and also in a few other countries. And Adam has a very good background in the use of marker-assisted breeding, and we're gonna basically incorporate this marker-assisted program is part of our day-to-day activities in the breeding program. Again, because of the generosity of our Rice Research Board, we were able to purchase a state-of-the-art system that will assist in this, and the system is actually manufactured in Great Britain, and we are, as we speak, putting all this material, all this equipment together in the lab. So we're really confident that the use of this technology is actually going to allow us to do a much better job of delivering varieties, both better varieties and in a more timely basis. And just kind of a little overview of how we plan to incorporate this into our program. We're actually going to have parallel systems where we're running segregating populations coming from the same cross through our established system and as well through the marker-assisted selection system. And it's going to allow us not only to fine-tune how we use the marker-assisted system, but it's also going to allow us to gauge how valuable the system is in trying to come up with new varieties. So we also, a few years ago, started a hybrid breeding program at the station. We don't have a commercially available hybrid yet, but we feel like we're getting close. We've got a couple of lines, and Dr. Jim Ward works with us on a day-to-day basis in our hybrid breeding program. We've got a couple of his experimental hybrids, such as this and this, that look to be pretty competitive from a yield standpoint and also appear to have fairly good yield stability. The one thing that we are really focusing on in our hybrid breeding program is quality. We really want the first hybrid that comes out of LSU's program to be something that is going to be a good quality hybrid. And that technology is out there. We can get good quality hybrids, albeit might not have a 15% yield advantage, but if we can come up with something that has a 10% yield advantage but has good quality inherent in it, I think that that's going to have a very big place in the industry. So we're also working in the hybrid program to try to come up with Provisia hybrid technology as well. And I'm going to stop right there and answer any questions anybody might have. Yes, sir.
When we do this line you spoke of earlier, what about botanical varieties?
You're talking about the CL272 and 153. And the question is panicle blight susceptibility. I think and we had a pretty good year for evaluating this year. I think the 153 is going to be fairly resistant. We did see a little bit in the medium grain, but no more than we see in Jupiter, if that kind of gives you a ballpark figure. Yes, sir.
Is the hybrid program you're working on, is it more of a 2-line or a 3-line program?
The question is our hybrid program a 2-line or a 3-line program? We're working in both areas, but probably spending 80% of our time in 2-line. I appreciate your attention.